Thank you very much for your kind words, and a special thanks is due to Javier and Mikhail for giving me this opportunity to share a piece of my research with all of you here in this conference. So let's begin. The erotic aspects of Achilles and Patroclus' relationship in the Iliad, despite its popularity, remain a polarizing and galvanizing issue in modern scholarship. Using a methodological lens comprised of gay and lesbian studies and trans history studies, this paper argues for a hero's intensely emotional and loving relationship as an expression of disavowal from social norms, a cautious yet calibrated representation of a non-normative and unconventional sexual bond between two adult men. The profound story of love of the greatest Greek heroes against the compulsory norms of heterosexuality is a subtle and powerful poetic vision of resistance to norms and conventions. The queer and trans history studies methodology is useful for highlighting a systematic institutional force, namely marriage or gamos, privileging sexual unions between males and females only, and suppressing other possibilities in the ancient world. The affectionate bond of the Iliadic heroes continues to inspire queer and queer sympathetic authors and artists in modern times to project the heroes as the earliest model of the same-sex relationship. The worldwide success of de Miller's novel, The Song of Achilles, 2011, translated into 25 languages, captures the general aspiration of viewing the Greek heroes as lovers. Madeline Miller, the author, a classicist and teacher, describes her motivation to write the novel that I knew that interpreting Achilles and Patroclus' relationship as romantic was a very old idea, and I was angry at the way homophobia was erasing it as a possibility. A chapter on the United Kingdom's Classical Association website dedicated to supporting LGBTQ plus school and college students, titled Queering the Past 2024, asks young reader to reimagine Achilles and Patroclus beyond the conventional view of the so-called heroic friendship. The continued interest in the extraordinary characterization of Achilles and Patroclus. Sorry. The present? Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. Thank you. Sorry. I have to go back here. Where was I? So the UK chapter of Classical Association website dedicated to LGBTQ school and college students, titled Queering the Past 2024, asks the young reader and scholars to reimagine Achilles and Patroclus' relationship beyond the conventional view of so-called heroic friendship. The continuous interest in the extraordinary characterization of Achilles and Patroclus' affective relationship stems from LGBTQ community resisting and pushing back against the conventional approach to suppress the emergence of same-sex desire and gender variance in the epic narrative. So what do we mean by non-normative? A trans history scholar, Susan Stryker, defines non-normative as an act that is conspicuously and consciously played against the social roles and statuses that a particular form of body is expected to occupy, and at the same time engages with socially constructed and accepted norms to make other alternative modes of desire and relationship visible. In light of the Stryker's definition, a queer and a homosexual body may be defined as performing non-normative gender and sexual roles, and I should add, in the orbit of unspoken desire. The epic poem often tapped into the ideal of masculinity, defined in opposition to femininity, and also in terms of men's desire for women. Maria Fonseca notes that differences between the genders imply and naturalize inequality, and consequently, the mistreatment of women is inherent or structural in the society in which women are constituted, above all, as objects of sexual desires for others. The poems integrate these conceptions into norms by privileging heterosexual unions in both the mortal and immortal realms. In a reconciliatory gesture in the Iliad, Book 9, while promising to give 7 captive women of Lesbos. Agamemnon also agrees to return Briseis to Achilles, craftily swears that he never slept with her, which he argues, even if he did, it is only lawful that men and women should have sex with each other. Me potetes hunese pibe menai mide hede migena he temis anthropon pele andron hede gunaikon. No other example more glaringly offers heterosexuality as an established norm as this one for Homer and his audience. Hensworth observed that by invoking Themis, by invoking Themis, socially accepted norms, Agamemnon rids himself of any blame or guilt for possible sexual relation with Briseis, because it would be completely acceptable behavior for a man, towards a woman. An enslaved one at that. Lesbian studies scholar Adrian Rich argues that the artistic and literary impulses to represent women as sexually appetizing objects for men and to place at an exaggerated level of idealization of heterosexual romance it points to a control of consciousness to privilege one mode of desire and suppress other variables. Madrid Navarro argues that one way the epic poems construct gender roles is by creating 2 gendered spheres, one of the battlefield belonging to men and the other of the household sphere dominated by women, as seen in Troy. In early Greek poetry, the feminine gender is conceived within the household space. At the end of Book 7 in the Odyssey, Arete is shown as fully concerned with domestic activities, ensuring Odysseus' comfortable stay. Next one. She orders the female servant to set up a warm, cozy bed furnished with a fine purple blanket and bedspread and warm clothing. A close inspection of Patroclus. A close inspection of Patroclus' representation of the Iliad illuminates his role as in charge of Achilles' domestic life, not dissimilar to Arete's in the Odyssey. So by highlighting the fine bedding items in Achilles' camp, Homer creates a transitory domesticity and places Patroclus at the center. Joan Roughgarden, a scientist and author, defines gender as an expression of sexual identity developed through appearances and behaviors. And it reflects both the individual reaching out to cultural norms and society imposing its expectations on the individual. Patroclus and Arete shared knowledge and control of these luxury items, however, is much more remarkable. It shows Patroclus, through carefully articulated allusions, defined and resisting social norms and traversing gendered roles. In the Iliad, a woman of Gune is considered equal to a silly child, pious Aphron, who is easily given to weeping. Achilles therefore rebukes, perhaps teases Patroclus when he weeps like a girl, overcome by the pitiful sight of wounded Greek soldiers. So by depicting him in a feminizing emotional state, the poet characterizes Patroclus as caring, nurturing, and thus gender traversing, to whom Briseis also refers as charismene, tumor, a joy to the heart. Achilles used to address Patroclus much the same way, but with a hint of more intimacy. Oh, godlike son of Menioitos, you are joy to my heart. He is Melikon, always gentle and sweet, thus making him a much desired, caring partner of Achilles. But the tendency to cast women in the emotional and caring role, Rich argues, also arises from the institutional force of marriage. It may be the poet wants the audience to recognize Patroclus' feminine aspects, a positive contributing factor necessary in a relationship to create a harmonious domesticity. Next one, please. And Achilles charitably misses that domesticity of his life with Patroclus at the center. As Achilles, remembering him so much, said in a loud voice, "Ah, once my most beloved companion, you, the unfortunate one, you yourself used to place delicious meals on the table in the camp quickly and neatly for me. Whenever Achaeans were in a rush to bring the horse breaker Trojans the lamentable work of Ares. But now, while you lie here slain, my heart is starved of substance, and despite plenty of food in the store, is longing for you. The use of Alcmenon theory, Alcmenon, meaning abstinence from food, in another position is noteworthy as it highlights a strong contrast with the presence of Patroclus' body and stresses its connection to the heart of Achilles, Aemon care, in the line above. Aemon care. It is the heart that is starved, and not the body, which is generally associated with the need for food and drink in the epic poems. The heart association with food and drink is odd indeed, perhaps because in the absence of Patroclus, the need of the body or the matters of living are no more relevant to Achilles. To moi u ti metaphrasin tauta memelen. Alcmenon, in here, an unfamiliar expression in relation to food and drink is paired with the noun possess, posios in genitive. It also stands to mean spouse. The poet could have kept the same word as sitos, meaning food, used in Odysseus' speech earlier. In the Odyssey, in a conversation with Odysseus, Nausicaa also used possess to mean both food and drink, but also to tacitly imply a husband with such finesse, charm, consistency, and caution that scholars have long suspected hint at an inwardly desiring, perhaps politician, Odysseus-like man to be her future husband. Achilles' emotional speech and his focus on the heart, care, and frame should be viewed as a poetic intervention that sympathetically presents unconventional love between our heroes. Edward notes that the construction of these verses demonstrate that Achilles means what he says. He sincerely feels that vanishing of desire and the resultant void in his core, care, and frame. So by juxtaposing the bodily need for nourishment and insatiable search for never to be sated longing in the heart in Achilles' speech, the Iliadic poet succeeds in constructing a vision of non-normative relationship of Achilles and Patroclus, resembling that of a husband and a wife, but also of a lover and beloved. In the line 319, the vivid description sorry, it's not here. Okay. The vivid description, sorry about that. The vivid description emphasizes Patroclus, a man, is a soul receptive of desire. Nun desu men ken kesar, the dick menos, as Achilles laments. We have to imagine him holding Patroclus' naked body close. The construction of verses in Achilles' lament in tight endowments is an instance of elusive language that cautiously conveys homoeroticism too. In fact, this inexorable longing the poet puts in Achilles' mouth has no parallel in the pain and pleasure, at least for Achilles, with the affection that a son on the distant land may feel for his aging father, who hopes to see him one last time, or with the affection that a father may feel for a son left behind as an infant. No, it would be much better and endurable, this thing just in the past, and though not exactly in these words, if only he had perished instead on the Trojan plain. Then Achilles hopes Patroclus would have survived and gone to unite his baby boy Neoptolemus to his grandfather and the rest of his belonging in Phthia. The absence of Neoptolemus' mothers in Achilles' lament, although overlooked by scholars, is remarkable. Once again, the poet is seen to intervene to avoid inappropriate and distracting mention of Achilles' one-time encounter with a lady that resulted in Neoptolemus at a time when his beloved torn body is laid before him. The construction of domestic harmony around Patroclus and Achilles' comfortably cloistered life provides a stimulus for the querying of Achilles' lament. It also highlights a homosexual relationship model resisting conventions and norms. Okay. The episode of Achilles' lament over Patroclus' body and how it is structured stylistically in an elusive and creative language enhances the two men's bond as lovers and companions forming beyond traditional confine and the dominant heterosexual normativity. The poet also carves a niche for same-sex desire and love, which nevertheless can only be expressed through subtle and elusive language. The poet would have risked social hazard by openly eroticizing a sexual relationship between two men. The desire for the same gender and its recognition exists in ancient texts and sources, albeit in the shadows. And the emphasis, when highlighted, exposes socially constructed gendered roles of masculinity and femininity and heterosexual normativity. Achilles and Patroclus' relationship mirrors a heterosexual one and contests and distorts expected gendered norms through an inexplicit, not explicit, declaration of love. And I thank you very much for your attention.